Hey everyone, welcome back to Shifting Perspectives, the Baja Beach Wellness Podcast. So I am your host, Wendy. Today I'm joined by the usual Amy, Angela, and Bridget.
Hi.
So today we are going to dive into a topic that affects a lot of people. Sometimes you don't realize that it's affecting you until you dive a little bit deeper into it, but something that a lot of people have experienced, something a lot of people are talking about right now, and that is narcissism and gaslighting. So that is our topic for today. We are definitely coming at you as people that are not psychologists. We are not therapists. We are just real people that are just going to have a real relaxed kind of conversation about this, talking about, relations that we've had. This is something that affects people, whether it's a family member, somebody that you're working with, your boss, a parent, your significant other, that, this is something that can affect you in your life. This is going to be a part of a series. So we're going to, kind of talk about general terms today, and probably get into the different types a little bit more in depth as we go on into the series. Definitely a judgment-free zone here. We're going to have some honest conversations, some reflection. Grab a coffee, take a deep breath. We're going to get right into it. Okay. So, first, gaslighting, for those that are not familiar, gaslighting is basically, you're dealing with somebody that's telling you that what you perceive as reality is not really reality. That didn't happen. I never said that. It wasn't the way that you think it is, and really can kind of get you to question, what really is real and what isn't, and question everything that you believe. Definitely can affect you that way. And then Amy is kind of our little expert on different types.
I say I'm an expert.
Okay, expert researcher.
I've just dealt with many types in my life, and now I find it very interesting that I can be like, oh yeah, okay,
yeah,
I get it.
Different. Yeah. So there's lots of different types of narcissists out there. Main ones, certain subcategories. So Amy can talk a little bit more about that.
And narcissism exists on a spectrum from mild traits to full-blown, like, people diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. So, I mean, everybody that exists has done they're somewhere on the spectrum of narcissism, throughout their lives with different things. But, there are legit, when it comes to manipulation, those are going to be your legit, classic narcissist that I think it's so important for us to talk about, because I mean, I had no idea, as these two will talk about too, I had no idea, like, the depth of manipulation and control and mental abuse that people like that can put on somebody. And it's just very interesting, because most people think of a narcissist, like, I always thought it was like the person who just is like, I'm better than you, I'm gonna do this, do that. Like, I had a feeling some people in my life that were in it for a while were narcissists, but then once you kind of have some more experiences, I feel like you kind of do a little bit more of a deep dive, and you're like, oh my gosh, wait a second. So I know there's pretty much two types of main narcissists: the overt, which is your grandiose, like, look at me, the aggressive, dominant kind of narcissist. And then there's the lesser known, I feel like it's a lesser known, the covert narcissist, which is the type marked by insecurity, defensiveness, hypersensitivity. They're the ones that often, like, mask the feelings of inadequacy, and they play the role of the victim. So never knew that was a type of narcissist, but as I went on in my life, I ran into a couple of those. So
I think it's too, like you were saying, there's like healthy narcissism. Like, everybody, you might say something that could be viewed as narcissistic, but there is a level of healthy, self-respect that you have, or self-worth, how you value yourself. But, what becomes, from what I've researched and understand, narcissistic personality disorder rarely goes diagnosed, because those who actually have narcissistic personality disorder, they don't think they have a problem. They're not going to go to a therapist or reach out for help or they think nothing's, wrong with their behavior. So that's where, definitely you might see some traits in some people. We're not diagnosing anybody specifically or anything like that on here, but it's definitely something that goes undiagnosed because the ones who actually have NPD do not go reach out to get diagnosed. So they don't think anything's wrong with their behavior.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah.
So what kind of experience you have? What are the red flags? What makes you sit back at some point and say, wait a minute, I don't feel like I'm being treated right. What makes you start to think, yeah, I'm dealing with something that's not right here.
I think the sad thing and the reality of it is that you don't acknowledge it or recognize it until you're out of the situation.
Correct.
And
Correct.
That's what's scary.
Mhm.
That for me has been every single situation of the three individuals that I'm thinking of. It was when I stepped away and I'm thinking back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like that is not right. And I was manipulated this way. And I have these beliefs that were given to me that are now affecting my behaviors, from the abuse that I took. I am in therapy, but really it took me being in therapy. I knew that the relationships weren't right and were a little off to begin with. That's why I wasn't in them or kind of separated myself from them. But when you start taking a deeper dive, it's very alarming when I look back and it's like, wow, how did I miss this? I thought I was independent. I thought I had a good head on my shoulders. I thought I was a survivor, street smart. And here it's just that constant manipulation of what they can do to you over time. It's not anything immediate that they can do to you. It's like this peeling the layers away or totally chipping away at you, where I went from being one person. And then by the time I got out of that relationship or distanced myself from it, I was somebody completely like that I didn't recognize. And then having to go through the steps, go through the therapy of getting myself back. It's definitely something that you carry with you for a very long time.
I think the biggest part of that is, or the scariest maybe part of that is you don't see it until you're out of the situation, but you do. I totally agree with what you said. You do know there is something seriously wrong here. You're just not quite sure like what's going on. And then once you are out of the situation, you're like, oh my God, how could I be so stupid? Yep. How could I put up with that? Like but it literally is like a mental abuse and it changes the wiring in your brain, especially gaslighting.
I think for me, I'll just share like when I really hit a breaking point, I knew I was having anxiety and I wasn't, a really anxious person before. And I didn't know why. I couldn't tell. I just knew I had this feeling in my chest. And I was talking to my best friend and I was like, I feel like I should get on some medication, nothing wrong with medication. But she said to me, she's like, why don't you try therapy first? Just before you get on some sort of pill or anything, just try therapy because there's a root problem and you don't know what it is. So, I went to therapy and my therapist figured it out in literally like 2 sessions. She was like, this is your problem. And, once I identified who the narcissist was in my life and what was going on, it was, you feel almost stupid. How could I have put so much trust in this person? How could I have looked up to this person? How could I have respected this person? How could I have been put in this position and not seen this coming? And, immediately I was very quick to like, oh, well, because if I have a problem, I want to fix it as soon as I can, to fix it. But it is something that you have to deal with for a long time because it gets into your subconscious and it does change the way your brain is wired as far as, having anxiety, trusting yourself, believing that you have the ability to make decisions and that you're fully capable. And there's lots of different, relationships. I've honestly had, especially once I learned about narcissism through therapy, I identified that I've had like 3 different narcissistic people in my life that like played a big role for me. So, and you talk about the different kinds. Some are super obvious, like, especially when you learn more about narcissism, it's really obvious, like, okay, that's how that person is. But covert narcissism is a completely different animal. This is not someone who is grandiose and who, is so full of himself and, or anything like that. It's someone who is maybe shy and quiet and you feel sorry for.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, wait a second. But, there's always something. And what I hope to talking and sharing some of our personal experiences today on the pod is it helps other people like maybe hear something we say and you're like, wait a second, there's someone in my life that makes me feel like that, or, has gaslit me or whatever it is. And then, maybe you're not like, this is definitely a narcissist, but it gets you thinking, doing more research, looking a little bit more into it and, stop and think, how is this affecting how you live your life? Because, that's what it does. It really does affect, and can consume you in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Especially in romantic relationships.
And I think that is the most important part, that we make people aware, that people just get aware for themselves, so you can see red flags before you get too involved. Because once somebody starts manipulating you mentally, it's really, really tough, to get out of the situation, until you just recognize it for what it is. And then,
well, and a lot of times too, it's, you're getting manipulated because you're getting praise, or you're getting what they call like love bombed. Like you're getting so much attention from this person, or you're getting, hey, what do we just say up there? This is just I do this because I care about you.
Oh, that would be feigned concern. They may use the guise of caring, saying, I'm only saying this because I care about you, as a way to deliver criticism or manipulative remarks.
And it, then you really start to believe like this person does really care about me. They want to see me succeed. They, if it's in a romantic partnership, they, you're it. You're the only one. Like you're it for me. Whatever it is, they're using these tactics to get into your head. And I think what it's, at least for me, when I realized all of the narcissism that was in my life, I'm like, you try to explain it. You try to be like, how could people act this way? And I feel like that's what I've tried to stop doing, because you can just, you can't explain it. It's literally how their brain is wired. But I think when you are a good empathetic person, you're a target, number one. That's exactly what they want. They latch on to you like a vampire, pretty much. But
a leech.
Yeah. And it's, you'll go crazy trying to justify the behavior because it's not justifiable at the end of the day.
And I think people are more careful these days because people throw that word around like, it's nothing, when actually, like, when you have been through a situation, it's, like I said, people do have narcissistic tendencies, but it's not like that's who they are and that's their personality. So I think, people do have to be careful, but people also have to be aware, because this is like, I see so many women just getting themselves into situations that, just wrecks them and wastes years of their life, Yeah, it's very unfortunate.
Well, they're very good at identifying a need.
Yes.
And it's not, and believe me, there's not only men narcissists, there's women narcissists as well.
Totally.
It's just we're sitting here as a group of women, but they have this cunning way about them where they identify what you're yearning, or what maybe your dreams, your hopes are, or if it's a lack of self-confidence, a void, they will they will identify it, and that is how they get you. And then when they get you, that's their supply, you know, and then they break you, and
so they can build you back up.
so they can build you back up. It's this cycle, and it's all about, I keep hearing supply. Like they need that charging. Like think of, I guess, charging your iPhone, you know? So when they break you, they're on a low charge. And then, okay, I'm going to build her back up. I got to plug my iPhone in. And every time they break you harder and more emotionally, to a point where it gets harder for the victim to get back to where that person needs to be, and to where it's harder for them to identify, because the harder they break you, the harder they're going to come back and try to make up for it. It's so sick.
So in your situations, did you, have people outside, a third party outside that it was recognizing this, that kind of, or talked to you and said, like, look, this isn't right? Or did you feel that maybe you lost some people? I'm just thinking, like, if you're talking about a romantic partner, that maybe you have a parent or family member that says, like, they're pulling away from you, or saying that, this isn't right, that you're in this relationship, that maybe they're seeing it before you were seeing it, kind of open your eyes to it?
I think so. Like, so my situation happened, like, it was my first romantic relationship after I got divorced. So I was like, 17 years fresh into the dating scene again. Like, who knows what to do when you're like 40 years old and you're thrust into that again. So, started dating somebody, and, my friends, like, they were like, oh yeah, nice guy. But then as the gaslighting started happening, my best friend's like, I don't know, Amy, like, I don't know if you want to, like, believe him. It was more of, we'll get into the gaslighting, but, there were, like, a lot of people that were like, like, you could totally tell they were like, I don't know about that, but you're so wrapped up in the situation that you just kind of, like, in the back of your head there's something wrong, like I said, but, like, you can't exactly, like, pinpoint it until you see it. Like, it's this crazy thing that once you get out of the situation, you see it like it was like a movie.
Like, how did I miss that?
Like, it's bizarre.
Yeah.
But there are also sometimes, like, people around you in your family or whatever don't recognize it, because narcissists are phenomenal at looking. That's all they care about, looking good. They care about how they look to others. They care about, so they will literally work so hard to build a persona to your family, to your, coworkers, to whoever it is, to make it seem like, oh no, I'm a great person. I'm a phenomenal person. So they don't think twice, So I know for me, like, it takes a really, really long time, because they work hard on that facade, and it is a facade.
So then I would assume that, when you do recognize what's happening, and you're maybe going to tell other people, I'm getting out of this relationship, I'm pulling away from this person, like, well, why? Oh, well, they're this, they're that. It's like, well, you're crazy. What do you mean? It's this great person, So then you probably, I would think, start to question yourself. Well, am I right?
There's so much questioning yourself. And that's why too, like, if, anyone hearing this is like, this is like a big deal for me. Like, I'm resonating with some of this. Please go seek therapy. It was the best thing that I ever did, because it very quickly opened my eyes. Someone who, I didn't go to therapy saying, hey, I think this person's my problem. That wasn't even like, the first thing on my mind. It was like, hey, I'm feeling this way about myself. I'm doubting myself. I'm having anxiety, and I've never had this before. And, shout out to my therapist. She really identified, well, why? And then we got to the root so fast of, like, oh my God, this is why I'm having these issues. And then it just uncovered everything else. So it's difficult to identify, but it's so important that people who have been in these narcissistic abusive relationships get validated, because you're constantly being gaslit,
Mm-hmm.
and Amy, do you want to talk about, I want to give it over to you for the definition, but let me just say, some people don't, I think the internet has brought a lot of this to light, which is great. But like my daughter got gaslit by a teacher last year, and I marched into this school with a meeting with the principal. Literally, the teacher did something in class, said something to her, okay, and then heard that I called the school about it and pulled her aside on the recess yard and said, "That's not what I said." And I went in this meeting and I was like, "You are gaslighting a 9-year-old. How dare you?" Freaking out. They didn't know the definition of gaslighting.
Wow.
This is a teacher in and out, like, oh my gosh. So please enlighten us. What is gaslighting?
And I think it's important because we've all gaslit somebody in our lives. And that's like a spectrum as well. And whether it was intentional or not, I think it's something that we need to discuss more of in general in relationships with people, because it happens so frequently. Maybe not to the extent a narcissist manipulates somebody with it, but I really think it's something, that is important. So I'm just going to read
the definition.
Definition. This is a long one, folks. Okay, so narcissistic gaslighting is a form of persistent psychological manipulation and emotional abuse in which a person with narcissistic traits or narcissistic personality disorder manipulates someone into questioning their own memory, perception, or sanity to gain control and power in the relationship. The primary goal is to protect the narcissist's fragile ego and maintain a sense of superiority, often leaving the victim feeling confused, anxious, and unsure of their own reality. Now, these are what I want to kind of get into. Narcissists use a variety of tactics to gaslight their victims, often in subtle, gradual patterns. Number 1, denying reality / lying. They flatly deny things they have said or done, even when presented with proof, and may lie about past events to rewrite history. 2, minimizing and invalidating feelings. They dismiss or belittle the victim's emotions and opinions, claiming they are too sensitive, overreacting, or imagining things to make their feelings seem irrational and unimportant. Blame shifting. They refuse to take responsibility for their actions and instead find a way to blame the victim for anything that goes wrong. Projection. They accuse the victim of the very behaviors or traits that they themselves exhibit. Example, calling the victim selfish or manipulative. Isolation. They work to cut the victim off from friends and family who might provide external validation and support, making the victim more dependent on the narcissist. Withholding information. They intentionally keep important information from the victim to maintain control and keep them off balance. And like we talked about, the feigned concern. They may use a guise of caring, saying, "I'm only saying this because I care about you," as a way to deliver criticism or manipulate remarks. Over time, the consistent pattern of abuse erodes the victim's self-esteem and ability to trust their own instincts. Victims often experience constant self-doubt and second-guessing of their own decisions and memories, increased anxiety, depression, and a sense of confusion, a feeling of going crazy or losing their mind, withdrawal from social situations and isolation from loved ones, a loss of their sense of self and personal identity. Recognizing these signs is a crucial first step towards protecting one's mental health and well-being. Seeking support from a trusted person or a mental health professional is essential for feeling and regaining a sense of reality.
I think it's important to say too, because I've experienced narcissistic abuse in a relationship. I've experienced it in the workplace, and I've experienced it with a family member. When it's a family member, you're really you talk about warping your sense of reality. Your reality is shaped by your family in a lot of ways. So I've seen, not just with myself, but how narcissistic abuse, can confuse someone so horribly. And one thing I learned was, if this is a parent-child situation, that it can actually cause the victim to block out memories and not remember things. And that is so sad that they don't know what to remember because they're constantly being confused, or they're constantly being told, that's not what happened. You didn't remember it like that. You must remember it wrong. Do you really think I would do that to you? Mm-hmm. Like, it's really, that is really hard when it's someone in the family.
And it's especially easy, I'm sure, too, for a parent to say, like, well, you were a kid. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've got to be remembering that wrong. Mm-hmm. You have to be. Yeah. Or anybody else, around that.
And as a parent, it's so important to validate your children's feelings. So, like, even if my kids, I literally thought about gaslighting the other night because my daughter was asking me something, and I was like, did this really happen? And I was like, I'm not going to say it like that. I'm like, oh, okay, honey. Yes. Like, if you remember, like, it was something like that it stopped me because of everything that I know. I feel like I'm probably going to be a better parent, better person all around for having gotten through all of these different narcissistic abusive relationships, because I'm more sensitive to it. It's important to validate your children. Yeah, if they think you went to Disney and you really went to the beach, like, okay, that's different. You can tell them, like, actually that was the beach or whatever it is. But, when it comes to what someone feels in that moment, I think it's important to validate that it might make you feel a certain way. And we're not talking about just fluffy stuff here, like, but like, something someone says might make you feel a certain way, and that's not you. Like, that is how they felt, and they deserve to feel how they feel and be validated for that is how you made them feel. It's all about taking accountability too, which narcissists have zero.
Zero. Big fat zero.
Yeah.
No accountability or personal responsibility, anything like that. But what I was going to say, going along with what you just said, is, I think the biggest thing people have to remember always, no matter what when you're dealing with other people, every single person on earth has a different lens that filters their reality. So you can't say they're wrong when they tell you how they're feeling. You could say, well, that's interesting. Like, let's talk about that, because I, see it this way. If everybody just kind of like calm down and realize we all filter things differently. It's not like somebody's filtering it the same way and they're just thinking total opposite thoughts. They have a whole different filter than you do. The world would probably be a much better place.
No, absolutely. And the problem is the real narcissists, and what we've experienced, is they're trying to make the lens. They're trying to develop the lens, or take the lens that you have and deliberately, manipulatively, like, oh no, this didn't happen like that. This isn't how I am. That's not how I act. Whatever it is, they're trying to shape what your reality is. And that's the difference.
So do you feel now that you are out of those situations, what have you taken away from it that you have used now, some boundaries you've set, some things that you've done now moving forward into other relationships, whether it's work relationships, romantic relationships, parent relationships, now that the boundaries that you set to protect yourself and make sure that this doesn't continue to, be a pattern for you?
That was a lot that you asked.
Was a lot.
I think, when it comes to raising my children, looking back on my childhood, I always thought for years, if I could go back and redo my childhood, I wish I could. Or a lot of times I don't even like to think about my childhood in any way, really. It was just not, I had good times, but it was very confusing. And I know for a fact, like Bridget said, I blocked a lot of things out. And now that therapy is bringing situations and behaviors that I've learned from the beliefs that were given to me that are completely wrong, I'm actually being very mindful in raising my own kids. I have this wonderful spiritual reader that I think I talked about this before, who was begging me to go to therapy for like 3 years. And I was like, no, fuck you. I don't want to do therapy. I don't want to feel. I don't want to rehash anything. I shut all of my emotions down just because I had that parent narcissist. And then I had 2 relationships of different narcissism traits, and when she said that whole, how can you emotionally be available for your kids if you're not emotionally available for yourself and you're not taking care of yourself? Again, I was like, fuck you. You're right. I guess. Fine. I will go. And it was the best decision I've ever made because it did bring a lot of things to light. So when it comes to my children, I wish I could go back in time because I really haven't started to validate them as much as I have within the past year. And it's awful. Not that I was me, but it was just, I'm paying more attention to the way that they feel and how they feel. Especially right now, I'm not going to lie. There is, a custody situation going on, and they're dealing with a lot right now that's affecting them in many different ways. So, trying not to parental alienate my co-parent and address their emotional and mental needs, it's quite the challenge. But I'm finding that the more that I'm doing that, the better my relationships are with my children. Because I know who raised me. I know who I was intimate with to give me my surprise blessings. And unfortunately I can't regret that person because if I did, I wouldn't have them, know? Right. So, and I know what relationships I've had afterwards. I do not want them to be the victim or that narcissist, right. And I'm also battling, my co-parent being a covert narcissist or an overt narcissist. Overt narcissist. And I do start to see some of those traits filter in with one of my children and trying to combat that with her therapy, because it's a cycle that I don't want to have continue.
Right. Of course.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I feel like it's breaking cycles because once you identify this kind of stuff, and let's be honest, everything I've read, narcissists are so insecure. They actually, at their core, they are crumbled. They have no real self-worth and it's all a facade. It's all smoke and mirrors.
And you're part of that facade.
Yeah. And you play into that, right? So it's for a lot of these narcissists, I feel like there's a lot in our parents' generation. And I assume, I know that's because how they were raised, it trickled down. And because we didn't identify it and, that the cycle wasn't broken above us, it's going to break with us here. So that's why I think it is really important to make people aware of this because, we were just talking about physical abuse is absolutely awful. But emotional abuse is very different. You can carry both, and usually when there's physical, there's also emotional, but the emotional abuse that you carry and how you have to put yourself back together and your brain back together. Wait, who was I before all this happened? That really, if we can identify it, that's the first step.
And I'll even take it a step farther and get darker with this. But, I'm a victim of a narcissist who not only has physically abused me, but also sexually abused me because I was manipulated and warped into that thinking, of well, no one else is going to want you. So you might as well me. Or, yeah, you know what? You're not getting that baby weight off fast enough, so your mouth will do, or it's stuff like that. It's dark, but it really, it happens. Yeah. And that's only scratching the surface of what I've been through. Yeah. And getting back to a couple of questions ago, did anybody ever pull you aside? Did everyone even recognize it? I think from my being raised by that narcissistic parent and not having emotion, being taught not to show it, just to move on, deal with it, I became very independent. I didn't go to college. I worked my way up the corporate ladder, bought my first house at 30 years old with 2 children on my own, no help from mom and dad, a lot of things I did for myself. That independence also came. I didn't want anybody to know what I was going through because I felt as though I would disappoint them in what I had become. I don't know if that makes sense, but you're going through shit and it's not right, but you don't, before I bought my house, this is like before I did that, but I didn't want anybody to know.
So you're kind of keeping everybody at an arm's length.
Absolutely.
So that they don't see
And
what's
then
going
those
on.
relationships, like, well, what's wrong with you? Like, you're not the same. Well, no wonder. You know what? Like, I am in survival mode, fight or flight, nonstop, all the time. It's at that time with 2 kids under 2, or I was pregnant. Like, I was screaming on the inside. And just the threats I was given, and like the gaslighting of you're crazy and this and that, and the threats of if I ever did leave, his brother-in-law is a cop, well, I'll believe me, don't think I won't use that leverage to take these kids away from you. I was trapped. And the last thing, when you were trapped like that, and that person is fucking your mind up.
And your kids
are everything. Yeah. And when you go from like being super independent, making great choices, and they're like, how did I end up in this situation? You're scared to death to leave, let alone ask for help.
So you're sort of like building a wall around it.
Yeah. Well, hyper independence is a trauma response. And that is like you and I, because we joke about that all the time. Like, if you're hyper independent, it's usually because you just decided, like, fuck everybody in the world. Sorry, I'm just going to do life by myself, and I don't need anybody. I don't rely on anybody. And that can be really damaging for like your future relationships. So
I'll give you an example. Because we always think of it as being transactional with a narcissist. Yeah. I'm in this wonderful relationship right now. He is my divine counterpart. I love him. We're going to get married. But, I remember within the first year of us dating, I don't know, he helped me with something around the house and took me to dinner. Like he was just like, oh my gosh. It's like, he's doing all this stuff for me today. I forget what it was, but I'm like, wow. And we're laying in bed, or no, this is before bed. I'm like, well, I got to put out. I don't really feel like putting out tonight. It's not typically our scheduled sex night. That's a whole other episode. We make it work. We schedule sex and it works. But I'm like, you know what? All right, I got to jump in the shower, wash the hair, wash the cooch, wash, the tits, shave the legs, shave the bush, everything, like completely hairless. And I get up and I'm like putting the moves and I'm like stroking his, like trying to get it on. And he's like, I'm just tired. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm kind of tired. Can we like just not? He's like, and I started like, well, what, are you not attracted to me anymore? Like, what? Like, what's her name? What's her name? Like, let's talk. Like, why don't you want to have sex with me right now? Why don't you want to bang me? And he's like, what is your problem? And I'm like, I just want to fuck you. And I'm like, thank you. And he's like, Ange, it doesn't work like that. I'm like, yes, it does. Like, you did all these nice things for me, and now I have sex with you. Like, do you want oral or something? You know what I mean? And he's like, no. He's like, I don't need you to sexually, like, thank me. I did this because I love you. I care for you. And as, like, bizarre as that is, but that is what I was trained for many relationships with the narcissist that I was in, where if they do the slightest thing for you, you have to put out. You got to do this. You have to repay them because it's a fill for them. They're getting their supply back. And it's sick. Here I am with this wonderful guy ready to scare him away because,
you're climbing him like a tree.
piece of new playground equipment. Yeah. But it's just, and I carried that actually from 2 relationships ago.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, I was doing that in my previous relationship, and it's not right.
Yeah.
I don't know how to accept somebody being nice to me.
Yeah.
So
I can totally relate to that. Like I'm so blessed to have been with my husband for like 18 years. I think it's gonna be 19 this year. But when we first got together, and I was really young, and I started dating really, really young, and I was in a relationship before him with a narcissist for about 6 months. And the way that ended, it ended so abruptly. He blamed me. He told me he was breaking up with me because I cheated on him. He found out I cheated on him. And I was like, I didn't cheat on you. So I'm literally 15. I just turned 16. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, but it was very sexual relationship in nature. And the same thing. So then I meet my husband when I'm 17. I really just could not understand how this person like just cut me off, and like it made no sense to me, and it drove me crazy. And then when I met my husband, it was like, you're too good to be true. Like, when's the other shoe gonna drop? Who are you cheating on me with? I thought that for years and years and years and years. And I've had the most wonderful, Michael is like the most amazing spouse and partner and friend and everything to me. But it took so long for me to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop, or to stop, thinking that, like you said with sex, like if he's not all over me 7 days a week, are you not attracted to me anymore? Like I've said that to him before, and he's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, but it is that subconscious programming that can be so damaging, even at such an, for me, it was such an early age, but yeah, not good.
Not good.
Not
Not
good.
good. All right. Well,
so to
We
continue,
could go on.
Yeah.
to be continued.
This is
Dot.
definitely to be continued. Next episode we'll dive a little bit deeper into those, other narcissist types that there are. A little bit more.
Apparently, there's like 14 now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And, a little bit more into healing. How do you
Yeah.
heal? How do you, we touched on a little bit of that, but, we dive a little bit deeper into that. So thank you. You guys were really honest and open, and that's what we need. Leave some comments, if something resonated here with you. We want to share, just what we share with us. And we hope that you have heard something today that may resonate with you, and kind of say like, hey, I may be in a situation that I need to look into.
And don't be afraid to
as
get
well.
help.
Don't
Right,
be afraid
exactly.
to
I would
therapy
give
and-
Safe Berks a plug.
Yeah,
for
are
sure.
in a
Safe Berks,
relationship
for sure.
that is mental, emotional, or physically abusive. Please reach
Yeah.
out to Safe Berks. They're amazing.
Yeah.
They do awesome stuff down there. They will gladly take your call. So,
And you're
Safe
never
Berks.
trapped. You're really never trapped.
Yeah.
That's important for everybody to know. You're never
Absolutely.
stuck there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So until
next
next
time.
time.
Next time.
Bye.